I want to talk to you about how we think about newcomers and diversity as an organization. We have a saying, having diversity is interesting, doing something with it is powerful. And that's why I referenced earlier our value of diversity and inclusion for growth and innovation. It is about innovation. It is about growth for your business that diversity creates. It is our core value. It is integrated into everything we do. We've been working hard at it for many years, and I want to share with you more about the what and the how behind our values as we think about learnings for our Canadian-run or Canadian-owned or Canadian historical businesses. So firstly, the client perspective. Given the population and the demographics, newcomers and immigrant entrepreneurs are a critical market for us as a business. That goes without saying. Also, when somebody comes to this country, it is one of the most traumatic and formative life events in that individual's experience. Being there when people need you the most can be one of the most important foundational activities in building a long-term, lasting relationship. So getting that right is important. So over the years, we've built up a team of individuals, employees that speak over 200 languages. So you need to be able to speak the language and you need to be able to relate to the culture. But it doesn't stop there. It's also about being relevant in terms of the service and the advice that you offer and continuing to raise the bar to ensure that you understand and that you're competitive. One of the most challenging things as a newcomer is to get access to credit. And think about, for those of you that have come to this country, think about getting a car loan or a mortgage, or even more challenging or equally challenging, think about getting a credit card. So the learning here may sound pretty basic, but it's profound. And I think it's an example that many of us can use as businesses. So lending money to somebody for a credit card without a permanent job, maybe precarious work, casual part-time work, without a permanent job or any credit history whatsoever, how do you do that when you're a bank? And as a result, banks have struggled to issue credit cards, car loans, mortgages to newcomers. But if you look beyond that, and if you take many of your own individual circumstances, or you take my family or my parents' example, or about a month ago, I was in the Brampton Newcomer Center, where we had the pleasure of participating in a financial literacy event where we were talking to newcomers about access to credit in Canada. And you sit and look at the 30 individuals in that room, and I could not, and I was an observer, not a speaker. And all I could do was think of my parents and how on the one hand they had anticipation about this country, on the other hand they had huge fear that they couldn't succeed. Our credit losses for newcomers without permanent jobs or credit history that get a credit card is very low, we found. And why that is because the last thing in a new country you want to do is put your credit history at risk, because you can't get a cell phone, you can't pay you can't get utilities, you can't live. And so if you take a different perspective and a different view about the motivation of the newcomer or your business practices, it opens up new possibilities. So now a newcomer in this country within that first year can get a credit card without credit history or job security with a limit of up to $2,000. Within the first 2 to 3 years, that individual with good history can get a car loan. And within 5 years, those individuals can qualify for mortgages if they've saved enough money and they've got enough equity to put into that home. All founded on the premise that it's a new beginning and individuals are going to work tirelessly to create a life for themselves and for their family and make success and not put at risk that fundamental opportunity to be in this country and establish that credit history. So we continue to learn through examples like this of how we can build products and services for our newcomer clients. I want to talk about suppliers. Like Ryerson and like other organizations, one of our priorities is to ensure that our supplier set is also diverse, both to ultimately to make sure we're accessing the best services from the best organizations over time. And we've been involved with organizations like Weeby and CAMSI, like others. And it's been very helpful to our learning and agenda from a procurement perspective. But what we found and stumbled across was that we had many suppliers struggling to compete effectively in the procurement process. So we created a supplier diversity mentorship program that pairs procurement category experts with newcomer entrepreneurs to mentor them on best practices, insights, and help them better to compete in the procurement process. And we've had success from that. And then the third learning area I want to talk about is our learning from a talent management and from an employee perspective. We could talk all day about this because building a diverse workforce that mirrors the markets and the clients that you serve is the first part. But ultimately, building that inclusive workforce and leveraging that workforce for innovation and growth is the ultimate. And we are on our path to doing so. We've had success. We've been named one of the top employers and workplaces in Canada, and we're proud of the Best Diversity Employer Award that we've won and awards that we've won in the past. We've had a lot of success. But one of the things that we continue to find is that creating that inclusive environment is harder than one thinks. And creating that inclusive environment, as I say earlier, goes much beyond recruitment and promotion policies. It's about culture, and it's about awareness, not just of newcomers, but of all employees. And one of the things that under Sabine Hergy, our head of HR, who's here, sponsorship, we brought in was thought leader Dr. Banerjee from Harvard University, who has done a tremendous amount of research on unconscious biases and how unconscious biases hold human beings back in general. It's not either-sided, it's human beings in general. And last year, Dr. Banerjee held sessions with more than 300 RBC leaders, and then more than 17,000 employees after that have benefited from some of the discussions and the tools that have emanated out of Dr. Banerjee's work and dialogue with us. And in 2016, we have a priority to take this conversation of unconscious bias and learning through a dialogue of unconscious bias to all of our employees across the organization. But back to the theme of entrepreneurship and immigrant entrepreneurs. I do want to share some perspective that I've observed, and I think we saw on the panel today, about key success factors for immigrant entrepreneurs. At dinner last night, we did have a conversation about angel investors and venture capitalists and access to capital, which for entrepreneurs in general is an issue, but I don't believe it is the key success factor. Because I think when you look at the panel that Ratna just facilitated, there are common threads in these individuals that have made them successful. So I'd like to share with you some of those thoughts. There's a newcomer or immigrant entrepreneur that you may know of, Alice Chung. Anybody know the name Alice Chung? You do. Alive Health Centers. Anybody heard of Alive Health Centers? Very successful Canadian business. Alice is an entrepreneur who started with one wellness boutique back in 1983. A business that happened accidentally, or she says incidentally, because she couldn't find work in her own field. We heard that from Salima earlier, the ability to pivot and the ability to survive. Salima used the word survive. Alice couldn't find work in her field, so she set up a wellness boutique, 1983. Over 2 decades, she's built Active into a successful chain of 29 stores across the country. And in June last year, she became the first recipient of the Top 25 Canadian Immigrant RBC Entrepreneur Award. Tremendous success. So when we talk to Alice and what brought her to this country and what has made her successful, Alice quickly goes to, and you see in Alice, her tenacity and work ethic. And we saw that in our panelists today. And it's one of the first things that Alice will talk about is that determination, that need to survive as what has allowed her to get to where she is. It's another reason that reinforces why newcomers and newcomer entrepreneurs are so critical to the success of this country. Well, all entrepreneurs should have a business plan, and I think back to being new to a country and that need to survive and find ways to be successful, doing it with a plan, both from a business perspective and a personal perspective, is critical. but it's not a plan that is an immovable object. It's a plan that gives you a place to direct your energies to, so you can learn and then adapt and then adjust and pivot, as Salima talked about. It is important to have a blueprint for success and then be able to rewrite that blueprint as you learn and as you grow. And then I think the last thought I'd like to share from Alice's perspective around integration is newcomer entrepreneurs do and will need many things to grow their business, and building a support network is critical. And a support network that is beyond our cultural backgrounds or beyond what we're comfortable with. It is that unconscious bias that may very easily cause us to hang out in the German community or the Indian community or the people that we know that are here. But it is building that support network of friends, of mentors, of sponsors, of advisors that are different than you, that have access to information and advice that you can leverage to learn and strengthen your business. Industry associations is just one way to tap into that advice and expertise and build those friendships and find those entrepreneurs. So surrounding ourselves with those industry experts is key to our success.